Just play the damn thing.
Look, I love guitar gear, obviously, right? And I'm fortunate to own a lot of it, more than I likely will ever need. And also a lot of it relatively high end and expensive. For me, that's part of the fun. I enjoy collecting. I enjoy acquiring gear. To me, the gear is part of the fun of being a musician. As a guitar player in particular. Admittedly, I don't really care much about bass gear, drums, or studio gear. That stuff doesn't really excite me as much. It's guitar gear that I get really really excited about. But it's not necessarily because I have gear that I enjoy that I get results that I find that I find enjoyable. Some of you who've heard my recording, some of you may agree, and that's fine. You often tell me in the comments, when I demo a pedal or something that I really, really enjoy. You guys, sometimes tell me that you think it sucks. That's okay. That's fine. But the point is, it's not, it's not about the gear. It's about using what you have. Because the real fun part is actually playing the music. Getting together with a bunch of buddies and starting out and jamming in somebody's basement, going out playing gigs, fighting over, ridiculous band bullshit along the way, as part of the story of the band. Anybody who's ever actually played in a band knows it's like being in the most difficult marriage imaginable, but with three or four other people. That's how I've always described, band relationships. The fun part is actually in the music itself. Yeah, I enjoy showing up to band practice with a new guitar every other week, or at least one that I haven't used. I enjoy swapping things out of my pedal board from time to time. Seeing what this song sounds like with this delay instead of that one on this setting. Things like that. Because I do find that sometimes I do my ear changes. Sometimes I do, hear things that I didn't once hear, and I find that, things that, that maybe at one time were not quite as pleasing to my ear, nowadays are. Some that high gain amplifiers, for example. I still love high gain amplifiers, but I don't turn the gain up to 10 on every single one that I plug into anymore, like I did when I was younger. Always turn the gain all the way up on every single one of them. Now, for me, that is way too much. Nowadays, most amps or pedals or whatever it is that I plug into, the gain level is usually somewhere between 10 and 2. And just about everything, that's where I live. Unless it's a low gain, something rather like a Marshall Plexi, yeah, then I'm going to crank it. But full gain on a Marshall Plexi is basically the equivalent to somewhere between 10 and 2 on, on something higher gain, like a JCM 900, for example. But the point is, use the gear that you have. It's okay to use the gear that you have. Especially for me, the real expensive stuff, the Les Paul Custom, my Music Man Majesty, stuff like that that's pretty valuable. Uh, the only people that see me, that see me play those, play those really expensive guitars are you guys. They don't leave the house. They're not going playing bar gigs or anything like that. It ain't happening. Uh, they're too expensive. Those guitars mean too much to me, and I don't want anything to happen to them. And I can ensure a much greater chance of nothing happening to them by not taking them out to play a bar gig with them. But if I take out a guitar that's worth 1,000, 12, 1,500 bucks or something to a bar gig, which is usually what I take, that just makes a lot more sense to me. Because the truth is, the audiences that I'm playing in front of, nobody in those audiences, save for maybe a few other guitar players that might just happen to be in attendance and pay attention to that kind of thing. Nobody gives a shit what gear I'm using. They care if they're enjoying the music that they're hearing. That's what they care about. Every record that I've ever bought, I bought because I enjoyed the music that I was listening to. Yeah, I may have gained an interest, and become curious about, what did this band use to make, to get that sound? What gear is he using? And looked into it. Yeah, I did, but that's because I'm a guitar player. The vast majority of bands' audiences that buy those records are, they're buying it because they enjoy the music. I own all of Metallica's records because I enjoy the music, except for Lulu. I don't own that one. I own all Five Finger Death Punch's records because I enjoy the music. I own all of Megadeth records because I enjoy the music. Pantera, Motley Crue, Ozzy, Alice in Chains. I bought it because I enjoyed the music. The music is what's really important. Now, that said, this is a gear channel. Or at least it has been up to this point, and it's, it will continue to be to some extent. But my audience's interest in gear demos has fallen off dramatically. So, I'm going to keep doing gear demos because, that's part of how I earn my living. Like I said, acquiring gear is still a fun part of this for me. But I'm kind of contemplating some ways that I might end up changing my content, or at least part of it. Now, the track that you just heard at the beginning of the video is, a couple of things. I've recycled that riff and stuff a few times here on this channel. Not that it's the most creatively involved riff, but it's a really simple riff that I happen to enjoy and gotten a lot out of, and even I go back and listen to it because I think it's just a cool simple riff that I came up with that I've been able to do a lot with. You may have already figured this out though. What I used to record with it, though, was pretty simple and inexpensive stuff. Might not necessarily what you saw on the screen while it was playing. And that wasn't meant to fool anybody, of course. That's not the point of this. But the point is, I wanted to start this video out with a recording that got what I thought were pretty good results. Matter of fact, I thought I got some pretty remarkable results when the end product was done. What I was actually using, though, well, here's another clip of it, but this time the video in real time. That was it. It was a used PV Bandit Red Stripe combo that I think I paid 175 bucks for. Another video coming on that later because that's like the the uber mega pedal platform that sleeper pedal platform that everybody's all been going nuts about for years now. Side note on that amp, I'll do another video on it later. I'll get into more detail, but that thing is ungodly freaking loud. Yeah, but it was a PV Bandit that I bought for about 175 bucks. It was boosted with a $50 Joyo overdrive pedal, a TC Electronic Profit digital delay, which is my favorite cheap delay. I think you can buy that thing for about 40 bucks nowadays. And I was playing a Kramer Beretta Special, a guitar that I think once again I think I paid about 179 bucks for that guitar. That's what that thing costs. Maybe a little bit more now with tariffs and inflation and stuff, but it's a very, very affordable guitar, and it's got an upgraded pickup in it. But go back and watch my video on that. I didn't need to upgrade the pickup in it. I changed out the pickup to demo the pickup for my buddy Rich, back when his company was still called Voodoo Pickups. That's the only reason why that pickup's in there. Otherwise I honestly probably would have just left the stock pickup in there because it sounded fine. I even used one of these handy dandy $8 curling cables that I told you guys about in a video last week, which is a smoking deal, by the way. Link down in the description. Mic'd up with a Sennheiser E609 microphone, $100 guitar mic that you can buy just about anywhere. Probably pick one up used for 70 or 80 bucks if you look hard enough. And that's it. I use Studio One because that's what primarily what I recorded with, but I could have just as easily used Reaper, which you can download for free. I have a Focusrite now, a 2-generation old Focusrite 18i20, interface. I bet you could probably buy that for about 300 bucks now. And a few stock plugins. And, the recording that you just heard, which again, my opinion, I thought sounded pretty good, which for the gear that I used in that recording, all of it totaled together probably cost about 600 bucks, including the recording gear. Use what you have. I bet you've got some great sounding gear that you don't even realize that you have. And you're stashed in a closet right now. If you're you need an overdrive pedal that you haven't used in forever, get it back out. Our ears change over time. Get it back out. Use it in a way that you used it, that you hadn't used it before, and see if you don't change your opinion on it. Use it the same way that you used it before. See if your ear hasn't developed some that now it might sound better to you, or maybe it does sound worse. Who knows? But that might also be an opportunity to to get creative and come up with a new sound all your own. The famous death metal sound by Entombed was a cheap solid state amplifier, PV something or other, I think, with a Boss HM2, all the controls dimed on it, going straight into the front. That wasn't anybody being innovative. That was a bunch of broke ass metal guitar players using what they had, and they of course stumbled on a sound that's now since become legendary in the death metal circle. Gibson couldn't sell a guitar to save their life back in the 80s. Finally, Slash comes along with Guns N' Roses, totally revolutionizes the way that that people were using Les Pauls. Now all of a sudden, Slash basically saved that company. Say what you want about Gibson, but that's a historical fact. Oh yeah, by the way, this Les Paul the Slash was using, that was a fake. Wasn't even an authentic Gibson. Use the gear that you have. Use it to produce the music that you want to produce. We spend too much time worried about that new fancy, latest and greatest piece of gear being added to our rig. I bet you if we all focused less on that and more on just making the music, we would all be surprised with the results that we got. So, links to all the extremely affordable and unsuspecting gear that I used in this video down in the description. Adios.